I found proof aliens exist. The discovery didn't come all at once. It started subtly, just a few strange signals, a bizarre pattern in data I'd been analyzing. At first, I dismissed it as interference or an error in my equipment. But now, as I sit in my cramped, darkened apartment surrounded by notes, recordings, and charts, I know the truth. Aliens exist, and I found proof. Let me start from the beginning, so you can understand how I got here, why my heart pounds every time the lights flicker, and why I've barely slept in weeks. I've been a researcher at a modest observatory for 6 years. It's not one of the famous ones, no giant telescope perched on a mountaintop. Our equipment isn't cutting edge, but it's enough to contribute to larger data gathering projects, like SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The work is mostly monotonous. I spend hours combing through endless streams of radio signals, looking for patterns that could indicate something other than natural phenomena. 99% of the time, it's pulsars, quasars, or human-made interference. But about 3 months ago, I noticed something unusual. It was late, past midnight, and the office was empty except for me. I had just started reviewing a batch of signals collected from a patch of sky near the Cygnus constellation. Most of it was the usual static, a chaotic soup of noise. But then, buried deep within the data, I spotted it, a repeating pattern. It wasn't random. At first, I thought it was a pulsar. Those celestial lighthouses emit regular bursts of radio waves as they spin. But the timing was off, irregular enough to rule out a natural source but too structured to be a fluke. I ran the data through every filter and algorithm I had. The pattern remained. It was a series of pulses, grouped in what appeared to be clusters of prime numbers. I reported my findings to Dr. Everett, the head of the observatory. He was intrigued, but cautious. "It's interesting," he said, peering at the screen through his thick glasses. "But it's probably just interference. Don't get your hopes up." I knew he was right. False positives were common, but something about this felt different. I couldn't let it go. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed. I cross-referenced the signal with every database I could find, looking for a match. I found nothing. The signal kept coming too, always from the same patch of sky, always in the same pattern. I started to notice other anomalies. The frequency of the pulses would shift slightly, as if it were responding to something. So I decided to test a theory. Using the observatory's transmitter, I sent a simple message back, a series of prime numbers. The signal disappeared for 3 days. When it returned, the pattern had changed. It was answering me. That was when I knew I had stumbled onto something extraordinary. I tried to keep my findings quiet, fearing ridicule or skepticism. But secrets are hard to keep in a place like this. Word spread among the staff, and soon I was fielding questions and skeptical looks. Dr. Everett called me into his office. "Listen," he said, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you need to be careful. This kind of claim can ruin careers. Without concrete evidence, you'll just look like another crackpot chasing little green men." I wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. I doubled down on my work, spending every waking moment analyzing the signal. It wasn't just a repeating pattern anymore. It was evolving, growing more complex. I began to suspect it was a form of communication, but I lacked the tools to decode it. I reached out to linguists, cryptographers, and mathematicians, but no one wanted to touch it. I felt like I was shouting into the void, and then the first email arrived. It came from an anonymous address. The subject line read, "We know what you found." The message was brief. "Stop transmitting. You don't know who's listening." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. Who had sent this? How did they know about the signal? I dismissed it as a prank and continued my work. But over the next few days, I noticed strange things. My laptop started acting up. Files would disappear or become corrupted. My phone buzzed with calls from unknown numbers, always silent on the other end. One night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. Nothing was missing, but everything felt off. The messages escalated. "You're being watched. Stop now, or there will be consequences." I stopped sleeping, paranoia creeping into every corner of my life. I started noticing unmarked vans parked near the observatory, shadowy figures lingering in the parking lot. And then the signal stopped. For 2 weeks, there was nothing but static. I felt like I was losing my mind, questioning whether I had imagined the whole thing. But then, late one night, it returned. Only this time it wasn't just a signal. It was an image. The data contained a visual representation, what looked like a star map, with a distinct path marked between 2 points. I stared at it, my hands trembling. It was a roadmap, but to where? I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I uploaded the data to a secure server and shared it with a few trusted colleagues. That's when everything went to hell. The observatory was raided 2 days later. Men in suits, accompanied by armed guards, confiscated our equipment and data. They refused to answer questions, only stating that it was a matter of national security. I was fired the next day. Now, I'm on the run. I kept copies of the data, hidden on an encrypted drive. But I'm being followed. Every time I log onto my email or access the internet, strange things happen. Errors, warnings, even power outages. Someone doesn't want this getting out. But I can't stop. The signal is proof that we're not alone, that there's something or someone out there trying to reach us. And I'm terrified of what might happen if they find me before I can share it with the world. Because whoever sent that signal, they're not just watching from a distance anymore. They're here,